You're listening to Everybody Pulls the Tarp, the go-to podcast for high performers. I'm Andrew Moses. Each week, you'll hear my thought-provoking conversations with Olympians, pro athletes, CEOs, elite coaches, best-selling authors, and other high performers to uncover their secrets to success. Get ready to be inspired each week when we talk about leadership, teamwork, work ethic, and more. Are you ready? Let's go. This week, my guest is new Duke University head football coach Manny Diaz. Manny's journey into the coaching profession began in the late 90s, when as a young professional, he stepped away from his emerging career at ESPN to chase his coaching dream. He took an unpaid volunteer role at his alma mater, Florida State, and the rest is history. Since then, he spent 26 years in coaching, including 3 as a head coach and 15 as a defensive coordinator. He's coached in 21 bowl games, including 2 BCS national championship games. And as head coach at the University of Miami, he led the team to 3 consecutive bowl appearances. Before being hired by Duke to be the program's new head football coach in December 2023, Manny served as defensive coordinator at Penn State University, where he helped the team to a 21-4 record and shaped Penn State's defense into one of the top in the country. Manny and I recently sat down to explore his career and the mindsets and leadership philosophies he's bringing to his new role at Duke. Our conversation is filled with powerful leadership and career lessons that apply far beyond coaching. Manny shared ideas that all of us can apply to our own lives, no matter what we do and where we are in our journeys. All right, grab a notebook and a pen. This episode is absolutely jam-packed. So let's pull the tarp and get straight to Manny Diaz. Coach, where I want to begin, as a young professional, you stepped away from an emerging career at ESPN to pursue your dream of coaching, which you began as an unpaid volunteer at your alma mater, Florida State. Take me back to that moment. What went into that decision, and what do you remember most about that moment when you decided to make that leap?
There was luckily a lot of youthful naivete, because if I really had known what I was up against, I don't know if I ever would have done it. I love working at ESPN. I was working around a lot of outstanding people on the NFL show there. I thought it was the next best thing to playing. And it's pretty darn close. It's really, really cool. And I just realized there's just one thing better, and that's really still being a part of the team, being inside that circle. And when you work in the media, you're inside a closer circle in terms of the access that you have. And you certainly have your own team. There was definitely a feeling of team at ESPN, but nothing quite like being with the people that are out there playing on Saturdays or Sundays. So yeah, that was sort of the big step to my wife, Stephanie. She had a lot of say in it. Like it was, like I told you, it wasn't very smart. We were pregnant with our first son. Didn't know how we didn't even know how you became a coach. So we just kind of literally jumped out without a parachute and hoped that we'd find a soft landing. And just through the grace of God, we did.
Did you go through a process with Stephanie where you guys weighed the pros and cons? Was it like a gut decision? Was there a lot of analysis in it? Take me behind the scenes on that.
No, I would say it was maybe somewhere in the middle. There certainly wasn't a chart with pros and cons, but it was just a feeling. And it was a feeling that was the time to do it. I was probably approaching a promotion at ESPN. It's one of those where if I'd have stayed another month, I might have stayed forever. And we were just young enough to say, hey, you know what? We feel like this is where our hearts are leading us, and that we ought to chase it.
Was there a moment that you recall at Florida State in that initial unpaid volunteer role where you felt confirmation, where you went home one day and said, this was absolutely the right decision?
Well, yeah. So that first year when I was the volunteer, I was working in the recruiting office, and as time got on and people got to know me a little bit more, and the roles started, when it's like anything else, you can do little small jobs well, then people give you a little bit bigger jobs to do. And you got to remember this time frame, man, it's Bobby Bowden, it's Florida State. The 97 Seminoles team was number 1 the entire year until the last game of the season, the last drive of the season at Florida Field. And so just being, when you're walking down that hallway and you're seeing Coach Bowden every day, I mean, you know what I mean? You're just like, it is a surreal aspect of it, being on the sidelines for those games. And like I talked about, where you suddenly were a part of the team, even whatever minor role you were a part of a team. That's the crazy thing, is going through this profession now, and you realize when you see a sideline on game day, and there's so many people on the sideline, that whatever part they have, they all feel like it's important to be a part of that team. And certainly that's what made it feel special for me.
Was there something about the experience from a standpoint of coaching? Was there somebody that you, besides Coach Bowden, that you looked up to in particular, that you said, these are behaviors that I want to emulate as I get further along in this process?
Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, because what a great place to, like I always say, what a great place to get your PhD in coaching. And so you got Coach Bowden, maybe the best ever to do it as a head coach. And then you've got Mickey Andrews and Chuck Amato, really the two of them together, running the defense. And they were the gold standard for defensive football. And I still said it, any defense, the defense I coached this past year at Penn State, the metric that mattered to me the most was that if Mickey Andrews watched us play, he would approve. Mickey, with his toughness, the way he drove the players to play so hard, it was really something to watch how hard those Florida State defenses played. And then Chuck, his smarts, his instincts, he's a great teacher, but schematically, to make sure that we were sound in everything that we did, and it made sense. So it was just a great combination of Mickey and his outstanding will, and Mickey was great scheme wise as well, and Chuck was great toughness wise. They overlapped each other very well, but just Mickey and his sheer will to make players do things that they didn't think the human body was even capable of, and then Chuck with his his X's and O's. It was just, like I said, it was an amazing room to sit in for the better over 2 years and learn from.
When you think about that, like getting people to push themselves beyond, to places where they didn't even think they could go as individuals and as a group, how do you do that? Like, what have you learned along the way about whether it's football or somebody listening who's trying to achieve something big in another discipline? How do people kind of push the boundaries of what they even think is possible for themselves?
Well, first of all, they have to know that you care about them. They have to believe that you have their best at heart. Because if they don't, somewhere at some point, they're going to hold something back. They have to believe that you know how to get them somewhere that they think they want to go, or even beyond where they want to go. So you have to have a level of competency, right? You can't just, okay, I know you care about me, but I don't believe that you can take me where I want to go. And again, I'm going to hold something back in that regard. And then I think the last point is you have to have an authenticity and an honesty about you in your dealings with the players, that when you see a thing that's not the way it's meant to be, that I'm going to correct it. And I'm going to tell you things that you may not like to hear. Football players, I'm sure all athletes are like this. And you become experts in dealing in failure, right? Because what is practice? Practice is nothing but doing something usually that's not done. To get all 11 guys to do it exactly the way it's meant to be done on a play, that never happens. You know what I mean? There's always something from a technical standpoint to an assignment standpoint. There's something that could always be better. And so to be a coach, you have to be someone that watches everything. You can sit, you talk about our defense at Penn State this year. You can lead the nation in defense and not be happy with any particular play or drive or game, because you know that there's always something better. And the players understand that you're not just making it up, because they can see it. And so we always say, we always try to, everything we tell the players, we either back it up with data or video. We don't talk about things that we can't prove to be true.
You're not talking in hypotheticals. Everything, like you said, is supported by data. It's supported by the video. I know you're a believer in constant growth, and you've had success at so many places, Coach. I'm curious, when you specifically look at the transition from the head coaching role at Miami, then to the defensive coordinator role at Penn State, where you had, again, extraordinary success, was there one or two things in particular from the head coaching experience that you were able to bring back to the defensive coordinator role that you think were particularly helpful for you?
Well, yeah, for sure. Even just one, the fact that when I was head coach at Miami, sitting in offensive meetings, sitting in quarterback meetings, I absolutely became a better defensive coordinator because of spending 3 years listening to quarterbacks getting coached and seeing the world from those eyes. So that helps. And then, then look, obviously when you go from having the whole team and everything that comes with that to having, half the team, and there's nothing like being head football coach. It is not coordinator plus two, or it's not even coordinator times two. It's coordinator times infinity almost. And so the ability to be able to just to take all that time and to focus it back on ball, it was a great place to do it, great staff to do it with, and most importantly, a bunch of great players to lead.
I'm thinking about a conversation I actually had with Micah Shrewsbury when he was the head men's basketball coach at Penn State. And he was talking about the transition from being an assistant throughout his career, both at the college level and in the NBA, and then the head coach for the first time at Penn State before he went to Notre Dame. And he said, Andrew, it was a mentor told me that, when you're a head coach, you'll understand this. He said, it's like running around trying to catch every raindrop. You could try, but you can't do it. I'm curious, now that you're back in that head coaching, have you changed anything about the way you organize your approach, the way you organize your day? Take me behind the scenes on that a little bit.
Well, yeah. I mean, in the basics, yes, there's different ways you can organize your day. Use the afternoon for meetings or maybe your non-football morning. So you can have a chance to kind of set your schedule where it's not random and haphazard. But I think the bigger thing, I think the two things from getting a second go around at it is, one, you're just so much more familiar with what to expect, especially in year one, because it's just so hard to predict, even though, it's like you see it. It's like, I always say, it's like parenting, right? You watched your parents, right? You had a front row seat for 18 years of being parented. And then you bring that baby home from the ER and it's a whole different deal, man. So I think the key to that of year one is understanding the type of people that you really want to bring into your program. And the best way to become a great head coach is to become really, really good at bringing great people into your program. And when I say great people, that's not even the people that are aligned, you know what I mean? That share the same values, that in essence share in your same vision. And the more you can better state what your values and what your vision is, then I think the better you're going to be able to attract people, who want to work in that type of environment. So I think that's a big part of it.
So what are the values in a Coach Diaz program? What are the non-negotiables, like when you're thinking about making sure you have that alignment with the people around you?
Well, like for us, it's simple. We're going to be who we say we are. That's more important. And I dispel, we talk about this to staff all the time. We are pushing back on the notion that being a college football coach is the worst job in the country. And in fact, we're fighting in the other direction here too. We think we have the best job in the country. Have things changed? Of course they've changed. Are there more challenges? Of course there are. But the job in its essence hasn't changed. We got a locker room full of great young men who need guidance. They need mentoring, not just on the field, but certainly off the field. And that hasn't changed. And you were asking about what it was like first getting into coaching, and those things, those are all still here. Those all still exist. And if you allow the other things to get in the way of all of those things, then you're just setting your priorities the wrong way. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, do we do things we don't want to do? Yeah, but guess what? Go drive down the street and look at all the other jobs and see who does everything exactly the way they want it all the time. So yeah, so I think being true to who we are, I think being people that show great mental toughness and resiliency, you want that. People who have a great enthusiasm, passion. You want to be around just people that are positive-minded people, and and guys that are highly competitive. And ultimately, if you have that, you got a bunch of guys you can trust, and that's really what this thing comes down to. Our season, you will get people into environments that are high-stress environments. And are you the same person in a high-stress environment? Then you are. There are some coaches who've been around that once it becomes August, they change. They become different people. And the team feeds off of that. The players see that. Are you a different guy when we're losing than when we're winning and all that? And that's, you can't have any type of stability in a program that way. And so it's important that starts with who we bring in, the players that will then in turn attract from there. And then you kind of get to build a program from that point on.
Coach, this show is called Everybody Pulls the Tarp, and it's all based upon a philosophy that I have that was ingrained in me, over 20 years ago when I worked as an intern in minor league baseball. And on the first day, I showed up in a nice pair of pants and a polo thinking I was going to learn the business of sports and work in the office. And quickly they tell me I'm going to be helping the grounds crew pull the tarp on and off the field. I'm going to dress as the mascot because the mascot has to go on his honeymoon. I'm going to park cars. I'm going to drive players to their hotels. I'm going to clean fireworks debris in center field. And it ingrained in me this mindset that in whatever we do, there are sets of expectations, and then there are things that you have to do to just get the job done. And the people that I've always wanted to be around are these people that I started calling the tarp pullers, people who were just, they would never say that's not my job. They would do whatever it takes. They would lead by example. They never asked somebody to do something they wouldn't do themselves. And when I hear you describe the people that you want to surround yourself with, I just think of the folks that I've throughout my life called the tarp pullers.
Yeah, there was another name that was so important to me is Rick Stockstill in my development as a coach, and then watching him as a head coach. And Rick just ended one of the longest tenures of any sitting college ball coach at Middle Tennessee. And that was his deal. There were no small jobs, right? And when the head coach does that, the head coach won't walk by a piece of trash on the floor and picks it up. When the head coach is stacking chairs, I know this, whether we're at Penn State or whatever, when the airplane lands at the tarmac, all the bags got to come out. When you charter the flights, there's no baggage people to bring the bags from the conveyor belt to the bus. And whether I was head coach at Miami or defense coordinator at Penn State, I don't know, I just go over there and bring some bags and put them under the bus. And I don't know any other reason why other than it makes the buses get out of there faster. Like, who cares? Like, it's just, we're all just trying to get home at this point, I just one of those small examples. And one of the things that I'll tell you that Rick taught us as a staff is you probably don't want to have a coaching staff. You probably don't want anyone on your coaching staff that you wouldn't want to have over at a barbecue. And what that means is that person who, like you say, that won't pull the tarp, that won't do small things, at some point there's going to be a level of resentment. And that's not going to come out in our sport. That's not going to usually come out in maybe this time of year or in May or whatever. But it's going to come out in the fourth quarter of a key game. And it's going to be something's going to be said on the headset that people aren't going to like. And it's going to create a problem from there. And we throw around terms like foxhole or, in a submarine or whatever. From a football standpoint, look, it's close. And the people who won't do those type things, at some point, I know this, people are always keeping score. And if you're the head coach, they're 100% always keeping score because they're always watching you. And that's why I said I'm fortunate for the mistakes that I made already as a head coach, that I've learned from them. And either my first year at Miami or at the top of Miami, and I've made a mistake today as a head coach, and I'll make one tomorrow. But you learn, and like I told you, you're authentic and honest about it. And like the players, you learn and you move on.
So let's talk about Duke. I was, as we were talking about before we got on here, as you know, I'm a Penn State graduate. So I was watching, you closely, and I knew with all the success that you were having at Penn State, it was just a matter of time before another head coaching opportunity was going to come along for you. And I'm sure there were opportunities that you passed on as well, because I know you've talked about this idea that you can love kind of two things at once. You can love the job you have, and you can also still want to be a head coach, and you're passionate about being a head coach, and you want it to be a head coach, but you always explicitly were very transparent that it had to be the right opportunity. So I couldn't be happier for you and your family that you're at a place that you believe is the right opportunity. What is it about this program at this time that made you believe this is the right opportunity and the right moment for you?
Well, one of the things we really enjoyed about being at Penn State is and again, this is where all the things we just talked about, James Franklin has been there for over a decade now. So he's been able to attract like-minded people. There was a really strong culture in the locker room. The guys really, really worked hard, were about work. It's hard to be a lifestyle guy when you're living in State College, right? You can try. There are some, but but you're going to be about the work in that program. And then coaching, the football IQ of the players that we were around up there was a little bit different than anywhere else I'd been in my career. And I think the difference from, in my mind, coaching a lot of really, really good defenses throughout the years, and then a really good one 2 years ago, and this past year where the numbers were kind of off the charts. I think that has directly to do with just our players' ability to understand. So you have all that thing going on at Penn State, and then here at Duke, and you're watching the success they've had the last couple of years. Well, there's, the strength coach David Feely was our strength coach here at Miami, and when I'm watching Duke play, I'm watching a David Feely team play, and then I'm talking to some of the coaches on the staff, and while they're having their success, not knowing this job would ever come open. And what it sounded like they had here at Duke was pretty similar to what we had at Penn State. The right type of guys in the locker room that are in it for the right reason, that are about the ball, and then have a football IQ that really want to do things the right way on the field. And so when the job did come open, it did feel like it was at the right place at the right time. And some of what we experienced at Penn State, we felt like we could build here and create a program of sustainable success here at Duke. And then the best part is that the program from the university president down had decided after the success of the last years that they were really serious about Duke competing at the highest level of college football. So it was, like I said, the right place at the right time.
One of the things, I get questions from a lot of people who are thinking about different career decisions and different paths. One of the things that frustrates me is when people, they're so impassioned by a title or a particular role that they just choose a situation that's just not right for them. It's a bad fit culturally. It's a bad fit because there's not alignment. What do you think has enabled you to kind of be disciplined in that regard? And what advice do you have for people who are kind of contemplating in their life a big shift? And how do they avoid kind of that shiny object and stay true to what they want to do?
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of the buzzwords right there, the people, the alignment. If people don't share the same values that you have, again, at some point, it doesn't matter. Look, there's two things I said. The logo on your shirt, as a defensive coordinator, there was no difference in the job I did last year at Penn State and that I did 15 years ago at Middle Tennessee. It was the same job. Like I would say, the only reason why they pay you more is because there's more people there to boo you, right? But the job itself, like, do you think I coached the kids at Penn State harder than I coached the kids at Middle Tennessee? Do you think when you're standing on a sideline and you sack a quarterback on third down, do you think that feeling of euphoria is more at Penn State because you're at Beaver Stadium as opposed to at Floyd Stadium in Murfreesboro, Tennessee? It's the same. I'll be honest with you. When you're on the sideline, you don't even see the uniforms when you're coaching. You're just seeing, I don't know what you're seeing, but you're seeing the chess pieces on the chessboard. So the job is the job. And I tell everybody, I said, look, when you have an opportunity to take another position, first thing I ask them is, are you happy where you are? And if they say yes, they are, then I always tell them, I said, beware of messing around with happy, right? It's hard to be happy +2. It's hard to be happy +3. We were fortunate. We were happy at Penn State. But again, what do? We checked out the people here at Duke. And it was the people that we felt were here that gave us the ability. And look, I had the ability to, as you mentioned, I had the ability to turn down some other opportunities because second time around, you know you can become a head coach. You know you can do it once you've done it. So you're much more careful in that and make sure that you've got to put yourself with people who are aligned value-wise with you. And if not, it's not going to have a good ending.
Coach, I'm curious about the situation at Duke. I mean, every new head coach, or every coach that's new to a program as the head coach, steps into a situation, and they're all different. I mean, there's some that are complete rebuilds. There are some that are on the decline. There are some that are on the rise. I mean, you're clearly taking over a program that's on the rise, and you talked about the alignment with the administration, the commitment to kind of put the resources behind Duke football in a way that haven't been historically put behind the program. So how do you, as a leader, when you're stepping into a place that's on the rise, how do you figure out what parts of the formula you need to kind of keep as is and what parts of the formula you need to change and make your own? I'm curious about that.
Well, I mentioned it before. That's why such a key to coming here was David Feely in the weight room, because one, it gave our players a great sense of relief that they already knew what they believed made them good. I had players sit in this exact office and tell me, we win because of David Feely here. How many times you hear coaches use the culture word, right? But it's a thing. It is a real thing, but it's a verb, right? Culture is an action. It's what you do. And there's nowhere you do more in a college football program than in your weight room. So knowing that foundation was already set, that's really rare when you come in from the outside. From that point on, yeah, you're always going to have stylistically different ways to play, some different ways in terms of the way you set up your program. Most of those, honestly, it's debatable how much that actually matters at the end of the day. But the part I want to, comment on as well is, look, in college football, on the way up, rebuild, this, that, and the other. Look, in this era now of the portal, it's hard to say where anybody is, right? I mean, every year exists in its own, every year exists in its own vacuum almost. I mean, we don't process that well. We're so used to college football being kind of a continuing narrative, and it's less and less of that now every year. So it is what we're blessed with is that we do have a locker room of players who now have experienced winning. They know what wins. They also have seen losing enough to know what loses. But we're nowhere near a finished product. Like a lot of people, we've got to add. We've lost some key components that we have to still replace even between now and the football season.
One of the things I think, and I think you make a tremendous point there, Coach, just about the changing landscape and how in many ways, it's kind of resetting and recalibrating like what expectations are even for different programs and different things. And I think one of the things that continues to happen, right? People seem to be surprised when one team that they didn't think was going to perform up to a certain level performs really well, and one team that they had kind of thought was going to perform really well doesn't perform as well. There's so much change and evolution going on. How do you keep players from, if the expectations are really high, how do you keep them kind of level? And then kind of similarly, if there's low expectations, how do you keep their expectations like how do you rationalize the expectations in an environment where there's so much change, and it's really hard to predict?
Because you never talk about expectations, you talk about a standard. And the standard is a standard, and it never changes. Like, what is our standard for performance? What's our standard for doing anything? And that's all we do. We work towards a standard. We have to play towards a certain standard. And I think one of the things that's so unfortunate about college football, because it's such a narrative sport, is that we lose sight of the ability for a football team to improve during the course of the season, right? Somebody will play a poor game in September and it's throw them into the trash. They're gone. I mean, even look at like what Alabama did this past year, right? They had a terrible September. They're 1 2-point conversion away from probably winning the national championship. Look at the Kansas City Chiefs in the NFL this year. They couldn't catch a pass in October, November, and they're back-to-back Super Bowl champions now. You know why? Because they got better. And I bet you Andy Reid didn't do anything mid-season about their expectations to win. It was just about their standard of what they should do on offense. And they reserved the right to get better. And to me, teams should have the ability, especially now, right, with all the incoming parts that everybody has during the course of the year, teams should have the right to get better as the year goes on, which ideally, when the playoff expands, that's what you want to see. But we struggle with that because we struggle on how to rank people and how to rate losses and this, that, and the other. And that's, I just think from the true aspect of competition, we're missing out on what a team actually really does. And the teams that you see that falter normally falter because all they're thinking about is expectation. One of the things I was so proud of with the kids at Penn State last year was when we lost to Michigan and we got thrown onto the scrap heap, right? Suddenly we were a useless, 2-loss team. How our kids responded defensively and how we finished the season, because they wanted to finish the number one defense in the country. You know what I mean? And they knew they had to continue to improve to do that. They had to continue to get better. And they did over those last couple of games, you know what I mean? To the point where our last game, I think we held someone to 50 yards or whatever. So seeing that, but why? Who cared about that game? Didn't it impact the BCS or the standings or whatever? It didn't matter. It was our standard. And that's what we were playing to. We were playing to our standard. And that shows you that the kids have bought into the messaging.
It was remarkable to watch, Coach, first and foremost as a Penn State fan, but really for anybody who admires courage and leadership and commitment to a craft. I mean, Coach, it says a ton about your leadership that the team was able to continue with that resolve amidst the narrative that you described. As we get ready to wrap up our conversation, but going back to your comments earlier about how there's this narrative that college football is like the toughest job in coaching, or frankly, the toughest job, one of the toughest jobs anywhere. And what you said is, no, this is the best job in coaching. And I just think about gratitude. And it seems that you're filled with a lot of gratitude and you bring a lot of gratitude to this whole experience. Is that something that you think about a lot? And you're grateful for all the opportunities that you have, grateful for every situation, no matter what comes of it. Is that something that you think about?
Yeah, we, again, straight from Bobby Bowden, we start every staff meeting with a devotional that we go around the room and everybody in the room gets to share something. And usually gratitude is the message. I tell everyone, we get to do this, right? Like we get to coach football. And again, I don't want to minimize, we do have major problems in our sport. I don't want to minimize but compared to what a lot of other people do, okay, we're really blessed to do what we do. And again, I'm an optimist also, and I believe that we're going to solve the problems that we have. And I think actually it's going to make college football better than it's ever been. And I'm hoping we're not very far away from that. But look, I know this. If I, as a head coach, if I come into this office and I'm depressed, right, and I'm not filled with enthusiasm, then certainly my staff is going to take note of that. And then certainly the players are going to take note of that. And suddenly we're just not going to be a very good football team. So whether it's for a competitive advantage or whether it's just, to me, a better way to live, I just think this is the way about going about things. And I think where our mental mindset is and how we talk through things and our our internal monologue says a lot about how we attack the day.
Our internal monologue does say a lot about how we attack the day. And you get to coach football. I love that mindset, Coach. You also get to impact so many lives, and you're going to continue to impact so many lives on and off the field. There is no question, Coach Diaz, you are a tarp puller. Thank you for spending a few minutes with me this week. Best of luck to you, the family, the entire program at Duke. Appreciate everything you did for my alma mater, Penn State, and I'll be rooting for you, no question, unless you and James are going head-to-head, all right?
Let's make that a day. That'll be fun.
That will be a fun day. All right. Thank you, Coach.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll talk again soon. All right, everyone. If you loved this episode, you might also enjoy my interview with Rand Pecknold. In 1994, Rand took the head ice hockey coaching job at Quinnipiac University for a $6,700 salary. At the time, Quinnipiac was playing Division III hockey, coming off of a dismal 6-18 season and practicing at midnight, the only time available at the local rink. Over the past 30 years, Rand catapulted the program to national prominence and recently led the team to its first national championship. This is another episode you don't want to miss. Check it out and let me know what you think. Thank you for joining me this week. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you can catch all of our upcoming episodes. And if you are like me and want a world full of tarp pullers, then leave a review to help others find us. You can also follow me on Twitter at Andrew H. Moses. That's Andrew H. Moses. And be sure to sign up for my email newsletter at everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter. I'll share tips and insights to help you achieve maximum success and happiness. Today is a great day to pull the tarp. I am rooting for you. See you next time.